Hi, my name's Matt Fradd. This is Ascension Presents, and today I want to talk about the myth that porn is adult entertainment.
Well, folks, as is amply clear from that, today's discussion and response will deal with the subject of pornography. Many of you know that we at Essence of Thought are intersectional feminists, and personally, as far as I'm concerned, my own feminism includes sex positivity. So let's get back to Matt from Catholic Evangelist Media Ascension Presents on the topic of pornography. Or so I thought.
100 years ago in Great Britain, if you said you were going to a gentleman's club, it was understood that you were going to an upper-class establishment to gossip with people of your social class, to play parlour games or whatever. Today, if I say to you, I'm going to a gentleman's club, like that, for some reason, because it's creepy, you know what I mean. I'm going to a low-lit bar that smells like urinal cakes and hopelessness. There is nothing masculine about pornography. There's nothing gentlemanly about strip clubs.
Whoa. I thought this was about pornography. No one told me it was about stripping as well. Stripping is not, and I repeat, is not synonymous with porn. Both purport to be visual sexual stimuli, and both may be depicted in fiction and non-fiction, but the actions entailed are very different. Pornography is a depiction for another or others of sex or sexual acts. The depiction may be in the form of literature, music, or as we know it in its most common form, on screen. Striptease, on the other hand, is a performance involving full or partial undressing. The undressing is usually accompanied by some sort of artistic movement, such as dancing. But stripping may not actually contain any other sexual act or sexual intercourse at all. A lot of strip clubs have policies on how much their workers are allowed to interact with the audience or how much they're allowed to show. Maybe make up your mind on which one you're going to address. But well, since the deed is done, on to the next bit.
When I was about 17 years old, my friends and I would go to the big city, and after a couple of beers, after a couple of clubs, one of us would make the decision. They'd be like, hey, why don't we go to a strip club? And we all went, yeah, okay. So we'd go to this strip club, and they didn't check our IDs. I guess business wasn't booming. There was always one of our friends who wouldn't come with us. I won't say his name. But he said, no, I'm good. And I always felt threatened by this, like I wanted to say, do you think you're better than us? And he should have said, yeah, definitely, But he always, it wasn't religious reasons. He just didn't think it was cool. And he was so right. I remember going up there, sitting down, being in the strip club and thinking, what would I do if I saw my dad in here? No, I never did, of course. But I'm like, I wouldn't respect him. I wouldn't be like, oh, hey, that's my dad. Respect. Guys, I told you he was amazing. I would want to die. I think you can relate to that, right? I remember thinking that, why is this okay for me to do, but it wouldn't be okay if my dad did it? And I wasn't religious at all at the time, but if I had have known my dad or my uncle or some other man that I respected was doing this, I would have been like, wow, super lame,
No, Matt, a person doesn't automatically become bad just because they visit a strip club. What does he do in the club? There could be a variety of activities he may participate in or decline to participate in. Is it frequent? Or is it just out of lark? Is it within the ambits of his relationship? Maybe this is not something he agreed to in his relationship to his wife and he didn't tell her, in which case he is definitely wrong. Or maybe it is permissible by mutual consent in his relationship or marriage. Or maybe he's single, in which case it simply isn't any of your business. It's the context that is important and not the act itself. You did not provide any context, so disrespect mostly works in the scenario where his partner does not know of his activity. A rather common scenario, yes, but one of many. You are also assuming your reaction is inherent and not conditioned. Any situation involving a parent's sexuality is very often embarrassing for children and teenagers, and it works the opposite way too, such as with kissing. Perhaps the context is absolutely right for your father, but maybe he should have been more discreet, because, let's face it, we don't want to share everything with our parents or children. An underlying factor in these matters is how open the children are with their parents about sexuality and vice versa. The way most societies in this world has often worked, we as children to our parents and parental figures often do not like to think about our parents' sexuality. This depends a lot on the culture, time, and environment. I was brought up in one where talking about sex with one's parents under any circumstances was taboo. Given my family's environment, even a mention of the three-letter word was awkward. This is in sharp contrast to a lot of my friends growing up in the West who enjoy a much healthier conversation with their families regarding sexuality. In fact, even in urban India or outside of my immediate family, discussions of sex are way more open. Yet, the inability to see parents as sexual beings exists to some extent or the other even in these cases. Children who have grown up in situations where they enjoy a frankness with their families in matters related to sex are less likely to bat an eyelid to parents' association with something sexual, or simply they may not even see nudity as sexual. To draw an equivalent reference from porn, different relationships have different levels of consent for partners watching porn. They may draw relationship boundaries based on that. In some, partners watching porn is disapproved completely, in which case doing so behind each other's back is wrong. In some, consent lies as long as partners are watching porn together. In some, partners have free rein to watch porn. In some, partners can watch only up to a certain extent or a certain type of porn. In some, consent is withdrawn when porn becomes an addiction for a partner or adversely affects relationship expectations. Whatever the case may be, it is a private matter which does not need to be discussed with children unless it affects them some way. And again, vice versa. If I know my parents watch porn, I'd probably choke on my tea, but I know that's none of my business. Hey, it's their private matter, and they get along. Who am I to say something? Do I want details? No.
Actions speak louder than words, even when those words are 5 feet high, neon, and say gentleman's club, Now someone might say, well, it's good, it's good, it's liberating to women and these sorts of things. This is a bloody joke, and I think it's a lie that we have to tell ourselves in order to engage in shameful behavior. Whenever you're doing something that you know is wrong, you have to tell yourself that you're the hero and those who are against you are wrong. You have to do it. Right? It's like we're saying I'm contributing to the liberation of women by masturbating to images of them being objectified. No, you're not fighting the patriarchy, you idiot. It's just not masculine. We have a real problem, I think, just admitting when we're weak. Maybe you're just weak and don't want to change. No, that can't be it. The problem is the Catholic Church are a bunch of prudes. You see, this is what we have to do to justify our shameful behavior. You've never done something good, and while you were doing it, felt the need to justify it. It's not like someone's in downtown Atlanta right now feeding the homeless people at a soup kitchen and saying, I'm not hurting anybody, shut up. We know you're not hurting anybody. Gladys, back on the meds. No, that's not funny. But it's like you've never done something that was good and felt the need to justify it. I think the fact that we can't engage with pornography or strip clubs without feeling the need to be like, no, this is adult. See that big, huge sign there that says adult? See, it's a gentleman's club. This is the height of defensive advertising. The fact that we cannot engage in these behaviors without having to lie to ourselves ought to set off alarm bells that this is not a manly thing. And someone might say, well, but they're willing to do it. And to that, I would say, no matter the level of consent, it is a manly thing to treat a woman who has forgotten her dignity with dignity nonetheless.
Again, no, Matt. I'm not saying that to anyone who doesn't ask, because frankly, people are a lot more secure than you give them credit for. And believe me, no one feels that need to defend unless presented with an attack, which is exactly what you're doing here. I'm having to say this because you are hitting out at people who are exercising their bodily autonomy. You are hitting out at audience and consumers, irrespective of whether they objectify or not. Nor is highlighting porn or strip work as adult entertainment defensive advertising, but a polite way of saying, big in quotes, keep your children away from this, end quotes. It's also just an umbrella title for a range of different things. What are you on about? It's kind of obvious we keep minors away from a lot of sex-related stuff because A, they cannot consent, and B, they may not fully understand sexual activities and their implications, so back to, well, they cannot consent, and they may derive a garbled version of what sex is really like, especially when a system such as the one I grew up in does not provide for comprehensive sex education. Now, before I go ahead and anyone says otherwise, I acknowledge the flaws in porn and stripping and really any sex work in our current society. Porn, stripping and sex-based work is often not well regulated, leaving the door wide open for exploitation. While the experience can be, yes, liberating for certain people performing or participating, for others it may be extremely dehumanizing, either because of a lack of redressal in case of problems or simply because they have been forced into the profession by someone else or by circumstances, such as in the case of human trafficking. But this exact scenario exists in many other industries, such as sweatshops, kilns, factories, tanneries, and even plain simple servitude in the name of caretaking. Does that mean caretaking and production of factory-made goods, construction materials, or leather is inherently bad? Well, no. It's the same here. In all of these cases, the societal negligence in most countries can make for gross ill-treatment. For example, there are strip clubs that do not care about their performers' comfort over what a customer wants. Yet there are others where performers are well protected, with customers very often having to sit on their hands so they can't touch the performer if given a private dance. The conditioned stigma attached to anything related to sex compounds the problem where victims of abuse in these industries cannot come forward due to the way they are treated. Porn often has the same premise, where performers undertake work in risky settings or positions but are not provided the minimum health care in case of injuries or any health insurance. Yet, many still choose to do it of their own free agency, and whether or not they feel liberated depends on how much control they have over the matter. Of course, there's objectification, which brings us to the main point here. This probably deserves a video of its own, but it's necessary I say this since you mentioned objectification. What is objectification? A Google search shows it's, big in quotes, the action of degrading someone to the status of a mere object, end quotes. In other words, objects do not have control over themselves or what we call autonomy. Objectification comes from an unethical audience, taking away the autonomy of a performer by ignoring all the other aspects that come with being human. However, the onus of guilt for objectification does not fall on the performer. After all, they're exercising their right to do with their bodies as they like without shoving it down the throats of people who do not come to their platform. My body, my rules does not lead to objectification. Many find nudity liberating, and that's okay. Many find total cover-up liberating, and that's okay. I'm somewhere in the middle. The point in autonomy is that I have absolute freedom to do with myself, free of fear, free of other people's expectations, and free of coercion because my body, my rules. Take, for example, Indian origin North American porn star Sunny Leone, who has recently broken into Bollywood. Leone was a sought-after actor who performed for some very big names in pornography. She currently owns Sunlust Pictures, her own production house. She joined porn of her own accord and she knew her worth. Initially performing mostly with other women, she began performing with men when she chose it. She has done a number of interviews, has endorsed various products unrelated to sex kind products, and has proven to be a sharp business person. In porn, she is in control of herself, her projected image, and her likes and dislikes. That is autonomy. However, then she ventured into mainstream cinema in Bollywood. Despite severe criticism, she was given opportunities in movies such as Ragini MMS 2, Hate Story 2, and Mastizade, and a host of item dances. While Leone has been praised for her performance, which is solely to her credit, critics often noted that many directors merely see her as a sexual carriage and give her roles that are almost always hypersexualized. Unlike porn, where the overarching theme is only sex, these are movies with an actual plot and an actual message. Leonie is a fantastic actor even outside of porn, as she has recently proven with her own biopic Karanjit Kaur. Yet her presence in such projects reduce her to merely being an eye candy, ignoring all other aspects that could have gone into her character. What is more telling is that this is a pattern for the characters she's cast as. This is objectification, where she is routinely typecast into a mold for sexual pleasure without her other aspects being acknowledged. The system expects her to be in that mold, thus restricting her creative expression to only one type, taking away her control. Sure, she doesn't complain. Why would she when many former porn stars playing character in mainstream work are still judged by their past, especially when this is in a relatively conservative country like India? But just because she has gone further than many doesn't mean she's exercising her autonomy to the fullest. And yes, it is possible to derive sexual pleasure without objectifying. Newsflash, men are not the only consumers of porn, and take it from someone who knows. Strip clubs catering to women with male strippers exist. This is especially important to remember because you keep using the words masculine and manly, which is probably the only bit you're not completely wrong about. Objectification exists way more in men because it is primarily an instrument of masculine validation that patriarchy enables and consumer culture further aggravates. Yet the presence of women consumers of porn or women audience in strip clubs and the differences in how they treat performers proves that visual sexual stimuli need not conflate with degrading a performer to a sexual object. For instance, ethical porn, such as the work of Erika Lust, which ensures welfare of its performers and promotes diversity in pornography by catering to other than cishet male viewers. If your argument against objectification came from a place of concern and support for performers and their autonomy, that would be valid. But it doesn't. The usage of words like dignity in relation to how you attempt to dictate how performers, especially women performers, should behave comes from moral policing and infantilization, a process similar to objectification that also drains them of their autonomy. It comes from a place of prejudice against performers. It's foul concern. You project your personal distaste on others and display irrational contempt when people do not share the same distaste. You despise these people for no other reason than what you were taught, and you dress it up as love.
Hi there, I'd just like to say a few things here at the end of the video. First, I'd like to thank everyone who's ever donated to the channel via Patreon, giving a special thanks to the following people: Hannah Banghart, Matthew Kovac, John Schoenrock, Daniel Martinez, Ernst Puna, and Alexander Williams. Your support has ensured this channel its ability to grow over the years, and really is the only thing that manages to keep the channel afloat. I'd also like to ask that you comment down below and like this video, as well as subscribe and follow Essence of Thought on both Facebook and Twitter. Please also consider following Atheist Alliance International on Facebook, an organisation dedicated to helping atheists around the globe. Any comments utilising language which insults others on the basis of perceived gender, sexuality, ethnicity or ability both mental and physical will be removed immediately, and the commenter may be blocked on the moderator's discretion. Let's keep this space one which upholds the humanist values. Thank you.